Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to IPDay's Webinar Wednesday. Today's webinar is titled When We Listen. I'm June Rawl, the Director for Florida IPDay. Today's webinar might feel a little bit different from other webinars, but we really thought it was an important topic to bring to your attention. Our facilitator today is Jenna Moniz. She is the Adult Student Resiliency Director at Atlantic Technical College. And today she's going to share a bit of her personal story as an example of how incorporating social-emotional learning, or SEL, into our work is not only effective, but it is necessary. Humans are an emotional species, and students in adult ed have likely faced situations in life that have required resiliency and in some cases healing. Today we're going to talk about how incorporating SEL into our daily work can connect the dots between our students' learning and real world and workforce preparation. Before we begin, I'm just going to remind you of a few housekeeping rules. You know that your mics are muted. You are in listen-only mode. You can put your questions into the Q&A section of your screen that you see here with the arrow, and we will be addressing those throughout the webinar. The webinar recorded version will be available in 48 hours, and the documents for this webinar are already posted online. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jenna and start the webinar.
Thanks, June. I appreciate it. And good afternoon, everyone. So glad to be back. And I know it's probably late in the month to say Happy New Year to you all, but I'll say it anyway. Hopefully your back to school is off to a smooth start. We know that it takes a little bit of revving up to get our adult students back in the flow of things. So hopefully your students have gotten back in, or enrolled or re-enrolled and back into session. Today's a different kind of day for us and for me personally. I'm excited to have this opportunity, and I'm grateful for IPDay for allowing me this opportunity to share a little bit. It's kind of a combination of my own personal story and journey and connecting the dots of why I'm in education in the first place and the importance of the direction that I see not only Florida, but hopefully the nation moving toward as we talk about social emotional learning and the incorporation and its importance, clearly not just at the K-12 level, also on the adult side. So I will start off by sharing a little bit about my childhood, good childhood friend of mine, and this is a picture of him here. His name is Melvin, and Melvin was a very charismatic character. I put this quote here on the slide. When I speak, no one listens to what I have to say, because this is a quote that he used in his artwork that he would paint on pieces, and obviously significant to how he was feeling at the time. Not to date myself, I won't tell you how many years back that was, but this was a while ago. I was a teenager at the time. Melvin and I were very, very close friends, almost best friends. He inspired me. He was an actor. He was an athlete. He was an artist. He was a dancer. He had all of these beautiful attributes about him, all of these wonderful characteristics about him, all of these gifts to share. And believe it or not, Melvin was failing out of high school. So it kind of, gave me pause, and forced me to think about, well, how is someone that has all of these gifts and all of these talents poised and set to do anything that he wanted? Teachers loved him. He wasn't a behavior issue. His peers loved him. His parents loved him. My parents loved him. He was a great guy and had all these gifts to share. How is it that he, it didn't show up on his grades, didn't show up on his report card, didn't show up academically? So, fast forward years later, and, after, having studied with you all in the ranks of education and preparing to be an educator and teacher, and furthering my background in cognitive science, brain-based instruction, we're all pretty much familiar with Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. If not, please do some research, not only some research into multiple intelligences. This is actually the first lesson that I teach to my students now. And here's the reason why. You can have all of these gifts, right? So from spatial intelligence, naturalist intelligence, musical, logical, mathematical, existential, interpersonal, bodily, kinesthetic, linguistic, intrapersonal, all of these ways that Howard Gardner proposes that intelligences show up. Only 2 of these quote-unquote intelligences get assessed in school. And that is our verbal linguistic and our logical mathematics, right? So when we think about our high stakes standardized assessments, they are basically reading, writing, math. And even in the content areas, they're done through reading and responding to questions. There aren't many opportunities for students to show their gifts of bodily kinesthetics. So if you have a student that is an athlete, for example, it's not just a skill. It's not just something that he's good at. It's not just a talent. It's truly an intelligence. So the biggest reason that I share this with students as their first lesson or project is to right off the bat empower them with the understanding that even if throughout your academic career, the assessments that you took did not demonstrate to you your level of intelligence, know that that is only one way to report or to assess, to test intelligences. If you are good with people, if you work well on a team, if you are self-smart, if you have a green thumb and are good in nature, if you are good at building things, if you are good at making music, these aren't just skills. Howard Gardner proposes that these are actual intelligences, and it's empowering to embrace that. So while my reading scores may not show, that I am the quote-unquote top of the class or most intelligent, I am intelligent where it comes to, other areas. And this is not, kind of a thumbprint and it's set in stone and you are this way and these are your intelligences and these are your learning styles forever and evermore. It then gives students, young people, us even adults, the opportunity to say, well, okay, well, now knowing that I am strong in, say, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, it's now a choice, now an option to get stronger when it comes to music, to get stronger when it comes to logical math, to get stronger at reading and writing. It then becomes a practice thing. And we'll talk more a little bit about mindset and growth mindset in a bit, but it has a lot to do with understanding, because how many of our students walk in the door and right off the bat say, I'm really bad at math, I'm terrible at math, I'm not a math person, I suck at math, etc. Well, after taking an inventory such as multiple intelligences, it then becomes an empowerment piece to where, students can say, well, my math scores may not reflect where I want to be right now, but I have all of these other intelligences. It then is a choice. It's not written into my brain makeup that I'm a bad math person. Now it's just a matter of putting into practice. Well, fortunately, Melvin had someone that looked out for him in schools. They say it only takes one person sometimes. He had someone looking out for him who was able to spot his gifts and helped him, and this was now in an alternative education, by the way, helped him to connect with his artistic side, helped him to write for a scholarship, and he was on his way to Savannah College of Art. So the future was very bright for him. But you all remember, right? This is what, well, perhaps school looked like for you. Rose and the teacher being the expert and the holder of the information, and students being the portals of information. So, you know, a one-way kind of model where the teacher gives the information to the students then repeat back the information. And this is a model, you know, that started over 100 years ago when, you know, education was, when school academics were set up to put people, you know, not into, this was the industrial age. This was not to, you know, in the innovative stages. So this was kind of a, let's move folks through. Here's information in, information out. And no news to any of you that our biggest issue in adult ed right now is student retention. And we talk about this a bit, and hopefully you are having conversations locally about student retention. And I know our numbers across the board are low across Florida right now for a number of reasons, including the workforce being strong. But we do get students that enroll, and our biggest issue when students enroll is the fact that they don't stay. The idea that they don't stay, they enroll long enough to become a participant in our reporting data. So they're here long enough to become, you know, to do the 12 hours and become a participant, but they don't stay long enough to post-test, or they're not post-testing. So it begs the question, why? Why are we losing so many students? Why do they come with the intent of completing, of earning something, whether it be a high school diploma through GED, or to, you know, to improve their English so that their career goals are stronger, or their career options are stronger? Why do we lose so many students? And when it comes to young folks, when it comes to adolescents, and this is a report that was done nationally through the American Promise Alliance, don't call them dropouts. This report was done nationwide, surveying students about why they have left the traditional high school setting. And if you look at the slide, down toward the bottom, you know, where it shows the highest reason, the most prevalent reason that students said that they left high school, they were failing too many classes. Okay, well, you know, there's something there are layers underneath that. If you start to ask why were they failing, you know, classes, the next most reported response was, well, they were bored. And I know that was true for Melvin. I know he was bored in school. I know he had gifts to share that just didn't have a place to shine. He didn't have an outlet to share his bodily kinesthetic, his athletics, and his art, and his music. There wasn't a place for that to be shared in terms of his intelligences. He was bored. And again, there are, you know, numbers of reasons and clusters of reasons why students leave high school early. And I don't know if your number of young students, 16, 17, 18 years old, have increased. Ours have, which really begs the question, again, why? And we know that, you know, a lot is going on in our media. A lot is going on with our, you know, with just the health of our planet. Climate issues are a huge concern for us, etc. When we turn on the news, it is a barrage of bad news, it feels like. You know, there is yes, so much bad news that is shared out in the media. And we know that over the last close to decade, our suicide rates of young people have just about doubled across the board. So take a look at the numbers of what has happened over the last decade with regard to young people choosing to take their lives. So it has to give us pause. And off the heels, again in Broward, off the heels, over the holiday break, we lost a student. It made national news. You probably have heard about Bryce, who took his life. Successful football player, IB student, strong grades, etc., on his way, full scholarship to Georgia Tech. And before he was able to make it, he took his life tragically and horrifically. And you know, it's something that we are dealing with now, you know, of course with his peers, and of course with the community, and of course it adds another layer to the pain that we're feeling here with regard to our young people and routing across the nation, but this is a national trend. It's a national trend that younger folks are taking their lives at a higher rate than ever. Some of the artists that our young people are listening to, if you're a parent and you have a teenager, it is likely that they, have icons that have either overdosed on drugs or committed suicide. And it really, really has to give us pause. Again, there are multiple reasons why this is happening. You can't say it's one thing. There are a number of factors. One thing we do know for sure, however, is that there's been a direct correlation over the last decade of the spike in social media and the spike in depression. And it just, if you have young people and maybe some of, I have to admit, I am very attached to, my technology and my cell phone. If you have young people, it is likely that they look like these young people in the slide, attached to their cell phones, attached to their social media, attached to their formats, whether it be through Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or, my goodness, whatever they're using these days. But point being this, the brain works in comparisons. The brain is always set up to compare one thing to another. So as these young people are scrolling through social media, it is only natural that they are comparing themselves and their lives, their situations to what they're seeing on social media. And often what gets posted on social media are these glamorous pictures of their peers and, folks and asterisks. We know that a lot of those photos are not even real to begin with. People putting on facades and masks, but people don't always know that. So they're comparing their lives and their situations to what they see on social media, and constantly feeling like they are not enough. And it's important to understand what happens with them, neurologically and biologically, what happens in the brain and what happens in the brain when you're under and experiencing stress, whether that be from the news or just the fear of our students. I cannot remember being afraid to go to school that there could potentially be a school shooting. And it is just is becoming a part of our culture now, a part of what we do with our code reds and our coupled on the fire drills. It has become a part of our new norm to anticipate something horrific happening. That puts the brain into a place of fight or flight. It puts the brain into a place of fear. The brain develops, from the back to the front, and the primitive brain is in the back, and that is where the limbic system lives. And the prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain, is where your executive orders lie. It's where your analytical thinking lies. It's where your critical thinking lies. It's where your decision-making lies. It's where your creativity lies. But when you are in a place of fear, and fear is even worry, when you are in a place of experiencing any kind of anxiousness, any angst, any fear, and we know that our young people report that often, because we know that young students who are coming to us from the high schools, traditional high school setting, or leaving school, oftentimes aren't leaving for academic reasons. They're leaving for social emotional reasons. And a lot of that is anxiety provoking, and can turn into worse scenarios, can turn into, escalate to depression, can escalate to, close to, the kinds of situations that we see young people when they take their lives. But the natural place of learning, the natural state for learning, is a place of wonder. If you think back or you look at little kids when they're at play or when they're learning, they are in a no-holds-bar free state of wonder. So let's take a look at what that looks like, when you talk about brain-based instruction or neurobiology. This is the cognitive science about it, and I won't get too deep into it, but I want you to look at the top and the bottom. So at the top is our beta zone. That's called high beta. That's stress. That's when people are anxious. That's when we are worried. That's when we are in place of not in the moment. You're maybe worrying about the future. What do I have to do? All the things that I have to check off of my list, and never enough time, and have to, run errands and have to do this and have to do that. Or you're perseverating on things that are in the past. I should have done this and I could have done that. It puts you into a state of what is called high beta. And those are the brain frequencies that you give off when you're in that place. It's the survival mode. It's when you're in your place of fight or flight. Just one rung down in yellow is alpha. That's your alpha state. That is a place of learning, and we'll talk more about that now. So this is what that looks like here. This is kind of a picture of what is called flow. And flow is alpha state. It's another way to describe alpha state. It's when you are challenged enough to be excited and curious. Not challenged too far that you are anxious about it, scared about it, but challenged just enough. So comfort zone +1, stepping just outside of your comfort zone to where you are interested and you are curious. Puts you in a state of what is called flow, aka alpha zone. The opposite of that, again, is boredom. So again, I think back on my friend Melvin, who was failing out of school, and it wasn't because he wasn't academically strong. It was because he didn't have a place an outlet for his gifts. He was bored. Here's the other piece, is that people need people, right? And, so the young people who are leaving high schools and coming to adult ed, the young people around us that fall into a place of anxiety, depression, often report that they feel isolated, often report that they feel alone, often report that no one could understand what I'm going through. They feel like no one else understands what they are going through. And when you get into a place of feeling alone and isolated, it becomes scary. They say that loneliness gives a higher percentage, or you are more likely to die early from loneliness than you are of obesity and smoking cigarettes. It increases your chances of dying early by 25%, loneliness. And it's because people need people. We are a social species, and just above your need to be safe and have a roof over your head is your need to belong. You need to have people around and be a part of a team and a part of a tribe and a part of a family. And so Maslow's hierarchy, which many of you are probably familiar with, says just that. So our physiological needs are, first and foremost. The human needs to be safe and have a roof over their head and food to eat, etc. Those are our basic human needs. We know that. Just above that is love and belonging. We need to feel like we are part of a team, that we are part of a strong tribe, that we are loved unconditionally no matter what happens out in the world, we can come back to a team. So think about that. Think about that in light of your students and their lives. And it is likely that a good portion of your students, whether they be coming, to the U.S. from another place and have left their family there and are here alone, or if your students are not in a healthy family environment. And I'll take that a step further. Thinking about ourselves, thinking about our staff, thinking about your peers, our colleagues. This applies to us too. If we don't feel like we have a strong sense of belonging, then a crucial human need of ours is not being satisfied. Steps up from that are your feelings of esteem and feeling recognized, that you have a voice that is heard, that you are listened to. And above that is self-actualization, and that's the point where you are actually able to share your gifts with the world. So thinking back on those multiple intelligences, I think back on Melvin. When you have the opportunity to find out what your gifts are, have the opportunity to explore what your gifts may be, what your passions are, and then a step further to be able to share those with the world, is a state that Abraham Maslow called self-actualization. Dr. Isaac Preletensky from the University of Miami, and any folks that are in the South Florida area and beyond. I mean, there are folks that are coming from internationally. This is just a moment for kind of a plug, and it's a plug for a summit that happens annually, and we're approaching it in March, mid-March. There's a summit that's called the World Happiness Summit. So it's the World Happiness Summit that happens annually, and it's housed on the University of Miami. And Dr. Isaac Preletensky is one of the professors and deans that are involved in that. He shares a great piece. Last year, he shared a lecture about belonging and mattering. And what he argued was kind of like we talked about a little bit just now is, you know, humans, students need to feel valued. They need to feel seen. They need to feel like their voice and their gifts are recognized. They need to feel like their stories are told. They need to feel like they matter. And also, they need to feel like they're adding their gifts and adding, you know, value back into society. They need to feel like they are contributing. And so when we do volunteer work and projects that are around bettering our community and helping others, if ever you've volunteered at, you know, any kind of service project, the feeling that you get when you leave those service projects are typically one of feeling full, like you feel like you've done something good. It's an authentic joy that you're feeling. I've heard it said that, you know, when you win the lottery, so many people squander their money, after winning the lottery, but it doesn't, they've done studies to show that after even, you know, winning millions of dollars in the lottery, it doesn't necessarily increase your happiness, but that giving away, you know, really truly increases your happiness. I'm sure some of you would beg to disagree or argue that point, but there is something to be said. I mean, if you think about some of our icons, if you think about Robin Williams, if you think about folks that have taken their lives, have everything, all the material items in the world, and still couldn't find happiness. You know, their testament to, you know, money and material items don't necessarily make you happy. But being able to share your gifts with the world and feel like you're contributing actually does. And so if we flip that coin and flip the perspective onto the workforce and what the workforce is asking us for, we know that the workforce is screaming out to us to send, and when I say us, you know, I'm talking about preparing folks to go into the workforce, and that's a big portion of our work, whether we are teaching English or helping students earn their diploma or working through a career and technical education program. The goals are usually to better your life and to get into a strong career, the career of your choice, to get into a high-skilled, high-wage career. And what these career folks, what the employers are begging us to do is to prepare employees with the kinds of skills that they're going to need in the 21st century. So I think back at that classroom with the rows and the, you know, read and regurgitate kind of model, you know, information in, information out. And what the workforce is asking us for is that we prepare their new employees with the kinds of problem-solving, collaborative, creative, coming up with ideas type skills that they're going to need, the grit, the persistence, the communication, 21st century skills that they're going to need in the workforce. There was a presenter that came to a recent professional development at one of our colleagues back to school, and this was actually Apple. So this was, you know, corporate Apple folks came to share with us and share what they're looking for in terms of their next employees and the innovation and the kinds of folks that they need to sit around a table and build things and innovate and come up with ideas and to create. And literally, what the executive asked us for was, we are begging the education field, we are begging teachers to come up with a unified definition for creativity. Come up with whatever our definition is around creativity and then teach that. So this is just more evidence to prove, that, as careers change and as technology improves and as there are fewer people necessary to do certain things like that, the computers are taking over. What we need from human beings are the kinds of skills that computers can't do. We need human beings to problem solve and to communicate with one another, to sit around a table and figure things out and to innovate, to create, to come up with new ideas. Right, so here is the top 10 list of workforce skills that are being asked for. So take a look at that list. If you notice, just about all of those skills are social emotional skills. Those are people skills. Those are skills that cannot be assessed on a standardized assessment. Neither CASAS, TABE, GED, ACT, SATs, you name it, won't assess most of these skills. And employers are telling us that we will teach the folks how to do the skill of the specific job, but we can't teach people these type skills here. We just don't have the ramp up time. That's not our job. But that's our job in adult education. That's our job as educators, is to prepare people to go into the workforce equipped with these kinds of skills that we know are skills in the realm of the social emotional field. So through projects that allow students to work together, to figure out things, to solve problems, to fix things that are broken, things that are real world, things that matter to them, asking them about, well, what issues are important to you? How can we work together? How can you work on teams to figure out solutions to these problems? End up being a win-win-win situation. When I say win-win-win, I mean we are feeding the workforce with the kinds of employees, the kinds of people that have the skills for what the 21st century needs that we just talked about. So we are equipping the workforce, we're satisfying the workforce. And on a personal and people level, we are allowing people, students, young people, adults, to work together. So it also satisfies that need of belonging, of feeling like you are working on a team, of not feeling isolated, of not feeling alone, of feeling like you are working with others, of feeling like you're in a cohort, of feeling like you're a part of something, and a part of something bigger than you. I recently spoke with an online teacher. And I'm familiar with the challenges. If it's not difficult to keep students face-to-face, it's even more difficult to keep a student online. But this online teacher had such an innovative approach in that she created this cohort where she connected the students around their lives, around their commonalities, around things that matter to them, and created what almost felt like a family to them. And her problem now actually is transitioning students on, because these students don't want to leave her class. They don't want to leave, and this is an online class. They don't want to leave her class because they feel like they found a place where, A, they're safe, they belong, they're part of a team, and someone else understands what they're going through. Just to be able to share the commonalities of, well, it may not be my story, it may not be my situation, but someone else understands the feelings that I'm going through. And this was an online teacher. I found it super innovative, but her retention issues are not there. Her problem is not of retention. Her problem is of moving students on to the next level because they don't want to go. So when you talk about social emotional learning, and obviously in Florida and with our new mental health legislation that is will become a part of what all of us do, even in adult ed, with the mandates around the increments of, or the time across the board that we have to teach mental health. What we're proposing and arguing is that this is not something additional. This is not something extra that we have to do. This is not yet one more mandate that gets piled on top of everything else that we have to do. This is not something that is separate from what we're already doing. It's not separate from, it's not in addition to our curriculum. It's got to be integrated throughout. It has to be woven throughout what we do. And a lot of us do a lot of this stuff anyway. You know, a lot of us are already doing these things that, you know, we're just may or may not be labeling social emotional learning. Point being, it's important to make sure that our students, no matter when they roll in, at what time of the year, feel like they are seen, heard, valued, that their gifts are allowed a platform to be able to shine, that they are a part of a team, that they are a part of something bigger, that they are not alone, that they belong in your class, that they belong in our schools. And I know that we are all very kind to our students. So it's not a matter of saying, you know, be nice to your students and make them feel, you know, cozy and warm. What I'm saying is it's important that we provide academic activities that also include the people that are in front of us. So before, you know, they walk in and we start teaching at them, it's important that we find out who they are and what matters to them and find opportunities to build curriculum around them. So, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's TAPE, CASAS, GED, again, ACTs, it doesn't matter what it is. The courageous conversation that, you know, that we're proposing that we have now is around, and, you know, and part of the issue is that, you know, we all have benchmarks that we have to meet when it comes to enrollment and when it comes to completions and, you know, when it comes to LCPs. These are all traditionally very important to us, and they are important to us, of course. They pay the bills, they turn the lights on. But people are not numbers. You know, people are not numbers, and at some point, and my goodness, if we're not at that point now, where we have to take pause to stop and think, are numbers more important than the actual person? Because, you know, we see over and over again, and again, and you know, our most recent suicide in Broward is one of many across the nation. You know, it's just something that we're seeing happening more and more. And the scary thing is, in terms of reporting it in education, when students have left K-12 and they are kind of off of the radar, we're not sure how many students we lose at that point. So, you know, what I'm proposing is that, you know, that we're asking, really, what we're asking is, are the numbers as important as their happiness, their lives, their self-actualization? And so it's a huge shift in mindset. And I know that a lot of you have started the work around, you know, Carol Dweck and others work around growth mindset. Sometimes it's just that we get into, you know, this is the way that we've done things for, you know, a long time. If you've been teaching adult ed for a while, your priority is, of course, you know, teaching your content, but also earning your LCPs, etc. But this is hopefully a time and an opportunity for us, so that these lives aren't lost in vain, so that, you know, we start shifting to looking at happiness and looking at wellness and looking at mental health. Hopefully this is an opportunity for that, because social emotional learning really truly at the end of the day is preventative, you know, mental health. So rather than focusing on the problem, we've got to intercept earlier on and talk about solutions, things that we know are research-based to increase life satisfaction, and keep people alive. And not just alive, but thriving. But we know that by age 35, that 95% of what we do daily is through routine. We know that 95% of what we do is based on habit. If you think about your own habits, you know, we typically wake up at the same time, make coffee in the same way, shower and get dressed, and, drive to work in the same way, turn our computer on in the same way, check our emails in the same order. We get into routines. We get into habits. And so again, by age 35, 95% of what we do is based on habits, and habits lie in our subconscious mind, which means that we are not even aware. Most of us can drive to work on autopilot. Don't even, sometimes we look up and realize, oh, it's Saturday, I'm not driving to work. I've done that. A lot of the time that we spend is based on our subconscious mind, and we know that our subconscious mind is just an artifact of the past. So if we're continuing to live through the subconscious mind, we're continuing to live and make our future our past. And I throw this up kind of facetiously. I play with this when I talk with my colleagues. I ask folks, well, what is this? What's this thing up here? And when I read it, it's the Department of Education, Florida Department of Education high school diploma. And when I show this to students, if you're teaching on the GED side, if a new student sees this and they come into, our field, they typically are pleasantly surprised that nowhere on that piece of paper does it say GED. It says high school diploma. So they feel like, wow, this is legitimate. This is a real high school diploma. I don't even have to say I have a GED. And it's true, they don't have a GED. GED is the name of a test. Who's to say it's, the high center task? We happen to use GED in Florida, but the end result is a high school diploma. And I bring this up as a point because even I find myself every once in a while slipping, and rather than saying high school diploma, I find myself saying, oh, when you get your GED, because it's habit, because it's just routine. So, thinking about how the language that we use around this, come and earn a high school diploma, or come and earn your GED. And we know that language matters, and we know that when we listen to students, it's important to them that it's called a high school diploma, that it's not called a GED. And so this report, this Aspen Institute report, I encourage you all to read. It is about social emotional learning and how we can weave it into the fabric of what we do through academics. And bottom line is that this is not a course or something that they do outside of academics. It's something that we weave into what we're doing. A lot of this we're already doing, a lot of this we do naturally, but when we get intentional about it and move from being so standardized test-based, when we move into allowing students to innovate and create and build projects together, in the way that the companies, including Apple, are asking us to prepare their new employees, it's win-win-win. Students are happy, the workforce is happy, and they tend to stick and stay. If they feel like there is meaning, if students feel like it's meaningful to them what they are learning, chances of them showing back up and not becoming another student that we've lost increase. I just like this quote: in every collective human endeavor, there comes a moment. And I certainly hope that we have reached that moment. We hold our breath and hope that we don't face another school tragedy like we've seen, or just national tragedy like we've seen. It almost becomes, I hate to say it and feel like it, but it's becoming part of our regular news reporting. And nowhere, no way is a mass shooting something normal. And slowly it's becoming a part of our normal conversation, unless we do something about it, unless we've hit that moment that we've had enough, that we can break the routine, that we can look up and say, what is really going on here, and what can we do about this? Because I think we're at national epidemic level. So the last part that I want to share about Melvin, and this is a picture of Melvin here. This is a snapshot of his dresser where his quote, where he wrote his quote, when I speak, no one listens to what I have to say. And he finished that quotation by saying, I still don't care about those people. I'll keep the day with a smile. But Melvin had the kind of charismatic, fun personality. He was definitely an interpersonal kind of guy, which is why his teachers and why everyone loved him. But not every student is like that. Not every person is likable. Not every person is super interpersonal. Not everyone's a people person. We've got students that we have no idea what they've been through the night before, the week before, the month before, years before, who don't show up with a smile, who may tend to, hide, just want to fly under the radar. So not everyone is going to keep the day with a smile, and we're human too, and we're less apt to reach out to the student if they are not the interpersonal kind of students, if they're the quiet ones. And it's often the quiet students that we need to pull into the fold and need to connect with other students. Oprah Winfrey, I may have shared this before. Oprah Winfrey, not too long ago, made a statement that, and many of you know that she started a school in South Africa for girls. And she recently went to the board and said, until we are teaching the person and teaching social emotional learning and looking at mental wellness, none of the academics matter. All of the career prep and all of the scores and the grades and the numbers don't matter if the person is still broken inside, right? So what good is a high school diploma? What good is a high-paying job if you're miserable, if you're depressed? If happiness is not money, if happiness is not a credential, if happiness comes from inside, then how can we not pay attention to it in academics? Again, it's win-win-win scenario. The brain is happy, the person is happy. When we connect students, they're learning the skills and the tools that they need to help us in the workforce and to innovate and help us to deal with and solve the problems of the 21st century that we don't even know are coming, are approaching. And this is my favorite, Albert Einstein, who knew early on a lot of things, including everything is energy, but also that education is not about learning facts. We don't need to memorize facts so much anymore, to a certain degree. It's not a matter of read and regurgitate, basically. It's a matter of training the mind to think. It's a matter of teaching critical thinking. That's what education should be, and that's where I challenge us to take it a step further and look beyond the test prep and look toward the people aspect of it, and making sure that people are not only socially emotionally well, but happy and ready for the workforce, ready for the kinds of skills that the 21st century workforce demand of them. And this is a recent picture of school, and while there are not long pews, it doesn't look very different from the picture that we saw at the beginning of the presentation of rows and kind of read and repeat style 20th century kind of education. And so I just we'll leave you with this: if nothing changes, then nothing changes. We end up with more of what we have now, and you have to ask, is it enough? So with that, I will turn it back over to June so we can wrap up with, if there are any questions. I'll actually take a look to see if there are any questions that may have come up.
You do have a couple of questions in the Q&A, Jenna.
Are you saying when they get a GED certificate, it says high school diploma? Absolutely. So when students pass the 4 GED assessments, what they earn is looks exactly like that picture. That picture that was on that slide was an example of what the high school diploma looks like upon passing the 4 GED tests. graduates. They earn a Florida State High School diploma. GED Testing Services is the name of the test. It's proprietary now, so they actually earn a high school diploma. So the other question that I have is about moving students from one class to another prior to the hours needed for post-testing. And that's a difficult question to answer because each school model is set up a little bit differently. You know, in some schools, it's one classroom, one teacher teaching all subjects. So, you know, from ABE to GED, I've seen ESOL through GED in the same room. So that's a difficult question to answer, but I will say this. If that's something that you would like to further discuss offline, we can talk about it more. June or I, or, you know, anyone at DOE is very good about being responsive and responding to questions about moving students and post-testing.
And a lot of nice comments coming through, Jenna, saying about what a great job you did and how we love the content. A quote, education now includes more than just teaching ABCs, but also includes being the emotional support for our students.
I love that. That's a great quote. That's awesome. Thank you so very much.
Well, Jenna, thank you so much. Now you see these 3 questions. Your feedback is really important to us. So just take a moment to fill in these 3 questions with your comments. Well, check yes or no. And before you leave us today, I just want to remind you, because it's not typical of IP Day, but tomorrow there is a webinar. It will be held tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and it's from My Career Shines, Florida State supported online education and career planning system. There's a lot of great new things that My Career Shine now offers, and we want to bring it to your attention. So we hope we see you all again tomorrow. And with that, thank you for joining us. Jenna, thank you so much for a wonderful webinar.
Thank you all. I appreciate it so much.